All right, step right up. This is the Savage Nation. The circus continues into the Thanksgiving holiday, and I will tell you that our prayers were answered Friday night. Welcome to the program. I'm sure many of you know what I'm talking about. As you know, I spent 2 straight days, 3 hours a day, 6 straight hours, imploring the president to reverse the ban on the ban of bringing in elephant trophies. I was adamant about it. I said things no one else dared say. And I basically hoped that the president would get the message, and he did. But I didn't know that when I left the air on Friday. What happened was I went to dinner with a friend of mine, and as I sat down to dinner in San Francisco with the cable cars below us, I got a text from a very important person in the media who said Trump's going to reverse the ban on bringing in elephant and lion and such trophies. I said to my friend, God has answered our prayers. God heard us. So I want to say thank you to all in the Savage Nation who texted or emailed Donald Trump. It's not over yet. But we're going to talk about that for a minute because to me, I realized 2 things when that happened. One, there is still a great, great power in talk radio, which I've never doubted. It is probably the most proactive of all the media types in the world. So many other outlets for media today. I believe that the talk radio audience is the most proactive in the world. It far surpasses Fox News, which is a passive audience. It far surpasses any other network in terms of reaction of audience, as I have seen over and over again. Whether it is through the fact that my last book was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, I will say it until you gag on it. I was not allowed on Fox News. I found out that there's an individual who's blocking me. I will not tell you who it is at this time. I've known it for a while. He poses as a conservative, but he is a bully. Watch out for all these conservatives who pretend that they're not bullies. They are the biggest bullies on the block. They are hypocrites. They're sanctimonious frauds. And I will tell you as I sit here, God will reward them for their work in some negative ways. But nevertheless, without any television, with very little promotion, Trump's war became #1. Why? My audience is not the largest in the media, and yet the audience is very, very reactive. So thank you for helping on the elephant deal. It's not over till it's over. And I want to talk about that because that night as I went to sleep, I was actually stunned. I could hardly eat dinner because my head was like, how could this really have happened so fast? I never thought that Trump would react so quickly to an outcry like this. Well, of course, he should have, because whoever put this order in place should be fired immediately. Whoever took a schmear from the Chinese government or took a schmear from the hunters associations or took a schmear from wherever, they should be found out and thrown out of the Trump administration. But that's up to Trump, not up to me. I put it on my website, michaelsavage.com. Trump hears the Savage Nation reinstates ban of elephant trophies. I went to sleep that night, as I normally do, go to sleep at night. And I heard, I know, laugh at me. I'm childish. I get it. It's okay. I'm glad to be childish at my age. I heard the elephants crying at night. I heard them signaling and saying thank you to Michael and the Savage Nation. I heard the most noble creatures on the earth sending their sound waves through the universe. Let me tell you that right now. You say that's stupid. That's impossible. Have you ever studied cetaceans such as whales and porpoises? Do you know how far their signals carry under the water to other cetaceans? Well, I'm not a cetacean. I'm a human. But there's a part of me that has a mystical receiver. And the mystical receiver received Ellie's signals. And all I can say, Ellie, is we're not forgetting you on Monday while we appealed for you on Friday. And I can also say, Ellie, while the other dumbos in talk radio who didn't even know about this issue will soon take credit for saving you, they will be the same ones who attacked Trump before they supported Trump, Ellie. And I think the people know exactly what I am talking about. That's topic #1. God answered our prayers. There will soon be an article up on this. Actually, it was up on Newsmax on Saturday. I did an interview, and it's up on michaelsavage.com. Many of you will find it offensive. It says, Savage takes credit for Trump elephant reversal. I'm one of many, but a very important one of many. And I will read that article to you in a moment. You can see it on my site or on Newsmax. But it is a godsend. Savage, a longtime conservationist and animal rights activist, told Newsmax in an exclusive interview Saturday, I'm glad Trump made the decision that led to the tweet. I'm glad he heard the show and read the column. President Trump said late Friday that he was putting a decision on lifting the ban announced Wednesday by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, quote, on hold pending a review of all conservation facts. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke later said in a statement also on Twitter that President Trump and I have talked and both believe that conservation and healthy herds are critical. Zinke should be fired. Zinke is a disaster for the United States. Zinke is a disaster. He's a throwback. Zinke is exactly why people hate conservatives and Republicans, in case you don't know it. Zinke is the land killer, the air killer. Zinke is the animal killer. I'm telling you what I'm talking about is 100% true. Trump could not have made a worse choice than promoting this guy, Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, to the Interior Department. He will set this country back 50 years. He will pollute the airs, waters, and places. And as I said Friday, this elephant story is only one part of a bigger puzzle. You cannot roll back every environmental regulation that was put in place by Obama and say you're doing something good for the economy. We will go back in time to a point we do not want to be. And let me tell you another story. I live here in San Francisco, which I love very much. I have many other places to live in, and I choose to come back here. I live here for the environment, not for the people. There was a time on San Francisco Bay that people ate the clams and oysters out of this bay. In fact, there were shrimp farms in Northern California, right near San Rafael at China Camp, where the Chinese harvested shrimp right out of the bay. That day ended a long time ago. As the bay became polluted, it turned toxic. You couldn't eat shellfish; you'd get poisoned. And so people were throwing effluents into the bay and whatnot. The bay turned from blue to gray. And what happened was the environmentalists came along. Actually, they were conservationists at the time, somewhere around the late 50s and early 60s, and they started to protect San Francisco Bay and other waterways for that matter. Well, at this point, there are no shrimp in the bay that anyone would eat unless they're crazy, but there are fish we can eat. I eat many different species of fish from the bay, and I've never died from it. And that's because of conservationists like myself. And conservationists play an enormously important role in this country. And for Donald Trump to appoint an anti-conservationist like Ryan Zinke, who thinks that by undoing every environmental law is good for the economy and therefore it's good for mankind, is the stupidest thing you could ever see. And so therefore, that's what I want to say about that matter. Again, this is one topic I'm going to talk about. I don't think I'm going to talk about the sexcapades of Hollywood. I think it's the most boring topic on earth. I'm not really interested in who accuses who of what. I think it's frankly run its course. You know, how much more can we take of this? Another woman accuses Franken of grabbing. You're surprised? You can't tell who Franken is by looking at his face? You can't tell a book by its cover? You didn't know what he was with that face of his? So I'm not shocked by any of this. On the other hand, he as well as all the others are innocent until proven guilty. Now they fire a New York Times reporter after sex harassment claims. You're going to say, how could this be going on that they're taking down even far-left reporters like Glenn Thrush? How is that even possible? Why are they doing this? I have the answer for that as well. Why do you think that the accusations are flying left and right across both sides of the aisle? Well, there's a reason for that. Because they're working their way up the chain to Donald Trump. And when they finally get back to the original accusers of Trump, they'll say this is not a vendetta against conservatives. This is simply an attempt to bring down all sexual predators. And so we're revisiting those accusations. And then they'll use the evidence. They brought down Franken, they brought down Glenn Thrush, Harvey Weinstein, and say we're not targeting Trump because of his politics. That's what they're doing here. Trust me, I have a foresight that I share with you on the show, and that's where they're going with this. There are other topics we'll talk about, including the stupidity of the coverage of the death of Charles Manson. I noticed that every left-wing newspaper, including every newspaper in America, suddenly said he's evil. He's the incarnation of evil. Well, he is the incarnation of evil, but he's the only incarnation of evil? Now, Manson killed how many people, was it, Robert? Under 10 poor people were slaughtered by him and his gang of Mansonites, right? How many people did an Islamist Muslim kill a few weeks ago in New York City by driving on a bike path? Probably more than Manson killed. And by the way, while we're talking about mass murderers, how many people were killed in Las Vegas allegedly by that man, the Caucasian man. How many were killed? Far more than Manson killed. But yet we can't get any information on the Las Vegas shooting. In fact, we have a soundbite that we're going to play for you later on the show from an attorney for the victims of the Las Vegas mass murder who says we're meeting nothing but resistance in trying to get access to the Las Vegas crime scene. Are you listening? Why are there roadblocks to the Las Vegas crime scene? Well, there's an answer to that as well. Many people suspect that ISIS was related to that slaughter. And that's why you're not seeing any mention of it in the New York Post, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, or any of the other major newspapers in America. That's right. There's always an answer to a question. So those are some of the topics we're talking about on the show. If you care to join the conversation on this, I would say pre-Thanksgiving show. You know that many people are traveling already. They left, I was told, by an Uber driver on Friday as I went into the city to a certain private restaurant. He said, they're leaving town already. How do people have so many vacation days? How do so many people but me have vacation days? How do they get away for a whole week and then more day? They go away like Friday already for the whole week. Now they come back, not Monday. No, they push it to next Wednesday. Where does this vacation time come from? Huh? Well, these are some of the questions. The phone number is 855-407-2822. We're talking about the saving of the elephants. We're talking about why they're focusing on Charles Manson as the face of evil and not radical Islam. We're talking about the gigantic Las Vegas slaughter cover-up and many other topics right here on the Savage Nation. Again, I invite you to call at 855-407-2822. I will be right back. Welcome back, Savage Nation. We're talking about elephants. We're talking about lions. We're talking about them talking to me at night. We're talking about why is Manson the face of evil and not radical Islamists who killed more. But I didn't ask you what is your favorite part of God, Faith, and Reason. I haven't asked you that yet, and I'm going to ask you that. You bought the book. I know that the sales are close to that of Trump's War in week 1. We'll have the exact placement on the Barnes & Noble bestseller list by tomorrow night and the New York Times list by Wednesday night, and I'll share it with you. I don't know what it's going to be. My guess, top 10, without any appearance in any TV shows. And although I was promised appearances on a certain network that's known for being so-called conservative, I found out that there's an individual whose greed and bullying knows no bounds, and that his next book ought to be God, Faith, and Treason. Treason to decency, treason to fairness, treason to alleged conservative principles. But I'll leave that for another time. What I've discovered in my life is that God has a way of getting even with people who are really evil. And although they think that they're going to get away with it, they never do. Eventually they're found out and exposed, and they fall. In fact, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. That's the way it is. So no, you're not going to see me on Fox News. 2 major league hosts try to get me on. But a certain individual who specializes in pretending he's one thing when he's in another, especially to fairness, decency, conservative principles, has stood in the way of my appearance. So what? Would it have sold another 5,000 books? Let me tell you something. What I'm going to tell you is that you are who is important. And I'll tell you something else. The sales of the book without Fox News are about equal to that of Trump's War. It will not be number 1 on the list this time for one reason. The headwinds are very strong. Biden came out with a book in this season. There's huge competition. And for a man alone with a radio show and nothing else, a few friends in the media here and there, it's very difficult in this world. But the thing is that that's the way it is. And I am actually, I think it's a miracle that this book was published to begin with. No publisher would have touched it but the publisher who had so many successes with me. But they took a chance on it. They did it for me. And to put these words between covers and display it in bookstores is a miracle unto itself. My feeling is this. God, Faith, and Reason at this point will have to sell based upon its placement in the stores and your support of that book and my show. It's that simple. Because it's not going to be seen anywhere else owing to bullying and to, let us say, unfair competition that is being enacted in the media at the highest level. But I'll leave that to attorneys, not to me, to figure out if there is a restraint of trade, if there is, in fact, a conspiracy to silence me or to keep me down. The courts will have to figure that out. WABC, Daniel, line 5, go ahead, please.
I was touched by the part watching the birth of my children. It's the most incredible thing that ever happened in my life. Not a Super Bowl ring, a World Series ring. I was a changed person. I'm 70 years old. And if I go on to 1,000, it's still the best and most wonderful experience I ever had. And you...
Now, wait, I don't understand. Honestly, Daniel, are you telling me you were changed by the birth of a child, or is that something you read in the book?
No, I read it in your book, but I said it about 15 years ago to a reporter that came up to me in New York City and asked me what the best thing that ever happened to me. And I said to him, watching the birth of my children, my little girl.
Yeah, that's right. Unless you've had a child and seen the child enter the world from the womb of your wife, you're not really a full human being. I don't care who you are, how rich you are, how famous you are. You do not know what life is. It changes every man into a different person. I don't even know that it's in the book. Where is that in the book? Do you know where it's in my book? I don't even see it.
Oh, God, I was up to page 32. I couldn't stop.
I'll have to find that during the break. I didn't remember something. Maybe I shouldn't have put that in the book.
Page 21. Go, page 21.
Amazing. See, maybe I put too much personal stuff in here. I don't really know where to stop sometimes.
I always had respect for the woman.
Oh, for fathers reading this book, think back to when your first child was born. Think about what it was like to be in that delivery room when your child came into the world. Oh, yeah. I have spoken to men who have told me it changed their lives forever. That's when a man becomes a different person. Guys, hey, tough guys listening. Did your life change when your child was born? Give me a call, will you please? I can just see the San Francisco audience laughing. All of the wise, smart people who are Wiccans and witches, who hate God, hate churches, hate Christians, hate Jews. All of the smart guys are laughing at this. But I grew up in that world where a popular song like this called I Believe by Frankie Lane, I was a normal teenager, ducktail haircut, speeding cars on the connecting highway, drag racing, the normal kid, chasing women, sometimes catching, sometimes not catching, sometimes catch and release. You know how it is. That's what boys did. So I grew up in a different time. But, these things influenced me, and so did the Ten Commandments on the wall of my school. I looked at it and figured that's for religious fanatics, but it went in my head. And so when at that point of making a decision in your life to do something right or something wrong, something good or something evil, all of those the messages of right from wrong, stayed in your head, and you knew what right was and what wrong was. And somehow that little switch took you down the right road most of the time. And that's because America was a moral nation. But now that it's become a Tim Leary nation, a nation without a compass, a nation without any concept of right from wrong, except in some rare pockets of America, it's very difficult to understand how a book like God, Faith, and Reason, number one, could even be published, and number two, how it's selling as well as Trump's war in the first week. So something is going on out there. And when I saw that Donald Trump reversed the order of the evildoer who said you can bring home trophies like elephant tails, tusks to sell to the vermin in China, on November 17th, I posted a picture of a dead elephant. If you look at the picture, go to my Twitter feed, and it was from an article, The Big Game Killing Field, Sickening Bloodlust of Trophy Hunters. Look at the elephant's eye. You'll see an animal that died in agony. Elephants are social creatures. They are not chickens. They are not microbes. When one elephant dies, the whole herd feels it. They grieve for each other just because they don't look like us. And so I wrote, do brave men hunt elephants? Should Trump prevent the importation of lion and elephant trophies? Somehow that tweet was picked up by the Washington Post. And then on Saturday, I posted, the same November 17th, thank you, President Trump. Flash, flash, flash. Trump here's the savage nation. Reverses the order. And we better pray to God that this reversal is continued, not only for the elephants, but for the lions, the rhinoceros, etc. And we'll have more to say about that later on. I want to take some calls on the birth thing and vacations and why we're hearing nothing about Las Vegas. Why are we hearing nothing about Las Vegas? I know it's like a distraction, which we're going to cover. Vegas victims attorney Catherine Lombardo says, we are meeting nothing but resistance in trying to get access to the crime scene. Now, why would the Las Vegas police and the FBI block the victims' attorneys from the crime scene? Why? What are they covering up? Anyone have an answer to that? I'm sure there's an answer to that question. 855-407-2882. Lots of questions, lots of topics. KBOI in Boise, Idaho. Gary, line 4. Go ahead, please.
Hi, how you doing, Michael? To honestly say that you're one of my favorites. Definitely my favorite talk show host. I'm pulling off the side of the road, so I'm not talking while I'm driving.
Yeah, be careful. Okay, so what's on your mind, Gary?
Okay, I talked about my daughter being born. Okay, I adopted 2 children before she was born. My first natural daughter, and I used that time, the bond that happened between my daughter and I, also extended to the bond between my adopted children. It was a miracle because
were you in the room where your daughter was born, and did you see her enter the world?
I saw all 6 of my children enter the world. All 6 of my natural children. I have 8 children. 2 of them are adopted.
Well, let me do this, Gary. There are so many men out there who don't have the blessing of a family for a number of reasons. They're too immature to be a father. They don't have the guts and courage to be a father, or they think that having a good time is the whole reason for living. Gary, tell them what happened to you when you saw your first child being born, when you saw the eyes of your daughter or your son come out of the womb. Tell them what went through your being.
First thing that happened is all of a sudden, like I knew beyond any shadow of a doubt there was a God. It proved to me that there was a God. The bond between me and that child was so incredible. I'd never seen this person before in my life. Never before. She's brand new. And yet somehow it was as if my life didn't work without her.
Yes, but as a man, didn't it bring out the most protective elements in your being?
Oh,
didn't you suddenly become like a sort of like a father lion for his pride, wouldn't you, or a gorilla? Let's make it very clear. The mountain gorilla, when you approach that group of gorillas and you try to harm any one of them, who pops out? It's the biggest silverback in the bunch. Protects the young and the women, isn't it true?
That's true. She's nearly 30 years old today, and I still feel that same way. You better not mess. I don't care who.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And, Gary, it's something you cannot tell a man about, but it's worth talking about on the radio. Maybe there's some young men out there who will be inspired to stop screwing around and settle down and recognize that they're not put on Earth just to throw their seed all over the planet like a mink or a rat. Thank you, Gary. I'm sending you a copy of God, Faith, and Reason to give out to a relative or a person who you think might benefit from it. It's that simple. If it sounds preachy, good. Then I'm being preachy. It's that simple. That's all. You want to have some other callers on this? I think this is a great topic. What has the birth of a child done to you? I'm talking about someone who's actually been in a delivery room. I'm not talking about the old days where you went out and had drinks with your friends and smoked a cigar, and then your wife was given to you all cleaned up, and you know, like in the movies of the 50s. You went to the hospital, and there it was in a bassinet or something, and you with your friends. No, I'm talking about the modern day of where the guys, it just started in the 60s, by the way, where they said it was better for the family, for the father to be in the delivery room, which, by the way, is repugnant to a lot of men. It's actually against the religion of certain people. Did you know that? To see the birth of a child. I don't know if you know this. Are there Orthodox Jewish people listening to the show who can inform me on this? As I understand it, it's actually against the religious teachings to be in the room of a birth. Am I wrong about that? Or did I read that in the wrong place? I'm not quite sure about it. But irrespective of what the religion of Orthodox Judaism teaches on this, I believe that it makes a man a much more profound father than it does just simply see the baby brought home from the hospital wrapped up and clean. Moreover, I'll tell you something else, guys, that you may not know. Maybe it's a little awkward to say it, but it's Life 101. Someone has to say it. When you see the travail that your wife goes through, you will come to appreciate how powerful a woman is and what she has to bear to bring a child into this world. And when you compare that woman, your wife, who gave you that baby, with the stick figure phonies in the media, you'll understand the difference between a woman and a stick figure produced by Harvey Weinstein. Let me put it to you that way. There is nothing to compare to that. And you may have your troubles in your life, in your marriage, as everyone does. But in the midst of all your troubles, you will never forget that were it not for the woman, there would be no family at all. None. You're just one of many that could have passed through. You know what I'm saying? But your child came because of her, and she had to put up with the pain of delivering that child. It tears a woman apart. It rips her to shreds. It tears her from inside out. So, have some respect for the poor woman. I know women don't want to hear poor woman, but believe me, it's a tremendously profound experience, both positive and negative for a woman. I can go on and on about this story. Many women have postpartum depression, and they don't even know why. I know why, because I've studied it for 40 years. Can I talk about postpartum depression for a minute? I think I should, just as I've got into it. I mean, it's a sort of a free-flowing show. When the embryo is developing inside a woman, where does the embryo get the nutrients from? Well, it comes from the mother. Now, you do know that all the nutrients that the developing fetus gets come from the mother. Do you know that if the mother does not have sufficient calcium intake, for example, she is liable to lose her teeth? I've seen that personally, not in my own family, but when I was working in a medical clinic. There are women who, at the end of 7 or 8 months, lost half their teeth because they were not taking sufficient calcium in food or in supplements, and the baby will take it first. That's the way nature designed it. Baby first, mother second. That's how the baby gets born. Otherwise, it would be deprived of nutrients and die, or be born, in a deformed manner. So now that we know about calcium, teeth, mother, but how many other nutrients are depleted in the growth of the fetus and the birth of the baby? So when the baby is born, the mother is completely depleted of nutrients. She is worn out. She often falls into a steep depression. And unfortunately, they are treated psychologically rather than nutritionally. Had they had proper nutrition during gestation and after birth, there would be far less postpartum depression. I wrote about it in the book I published in the 1980s entitled Healing Children Naturally, which I think is still available. In fact, I think it's on my website for sale. I've stumbled upon a copy a while ago. It's still a great book. It was 25 years ahead of its time. And I would recommend all women out there to look into it, not only for themselves, but for the children that they're trying to raise. How many mothers I see in the mornings, women who seem to be intelligent looking, healthy looking, giving the baby cookies or worse. I see them eating. I see women giving I saw a woman the other day. She was pushing a stroller with twins in it, and each of the two boys was munching on a croissant. These kids were no more than 2 years old, 3 years old. All I did was shake my head and say, the mother is dumber than the children. How could she not understand what she is doing to the child's metabolism by giving them this rush of sucrose? Does she not understand it's going to lead them to drug addiction? There's so much about that in that book, Healing Children Naturally. Maybe I'll talk about it in January, long after God, Faith, and Reason has sort of diminished from the mind of the people. Not because I want to make the money on it. I want you to raise healthy children. It's all connected to God, Faith, and Reason when you think about it. So is my entire life of writing. Look, we're running short of time, and I'm doing what I do best, which is, let us say, naturalist radio. I had talked about that this morning. I was on a talk show with Armstrong and Getty out of Sacramento. I've known them for years. And I told them, they asked me something about my style of radio. And I said, look, the younger people who want to go into this business should understand that doing natural radio, naturalist radio, is one of the hardest things you can do. And if you do it wrong, you will fall on your face. I'll be right back. Let me ask you something. Wouldn't it be great to have all the energy you want all day long? Unfortunately, fatigue often gets in the way. Even for everyday activities, it seems to get worse every year. And listen, here's why. Here's why. When you're 20, your body has a natural ability to maintain healthy circulation. But by age 40, that ability decreases by 50%, by half. That leaves you feeling drained and tired. So what can you do to increase that youthful, natural circulation and fight fatigue? Drink SuperBeets. SuperBeets promotes the body's own natural ability to produce healthier circulation for increased energy and stamina all day long. Only SuperBeets is made from beets grown to very exact standards and then concentrated into superfood crystals. So listen to me. If you want to increase your own natural energy, call 800-481-0504 or go to SavageLovesBeets.com. You heard me. With your first order, guess what? You get another 30-day supply of SuperBeets free indicator strips to see how they're really working, and free shipping. Call 800-481-0504, 481-0504, or go to SavageLovesBeets.com. That's all. Now let's go on to the callers on the Savage Nation. We're talking about birth. We're talking about death. We're talking about God, faith, and treason. We're talking about decency, fairness, conservative principles, and things of that nature on the Savage Nation. Norman, WABC, New York City, line 6. Go ahead, please.
First, I want to congratulate you on that fabulous interview you had with Larry Kudlow on Saturday.
Oh, yes. Larry really amazed me on ABC. I didn't know that he had troubles, and he was, because he found God, that he really wanted this book. I didn't know Larry was someone who was overcoming addiction when he was younger. I had no idea.
Yeah, me neither. So on God, sometimes I believe in God, sometimes I don't. But when I do believe in him, I can't get myself to believe in that there's an afterlife. You're a man of science. When the body's dead, that's it. Do you believe there's some kind of magical vapor that goes somewhere?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot, and I can't answer the question, Norman. Secondly, my beliefs have nothing to do with your beliefs, nor am I an evangelist trying to sell you something. So I will leave you with your atheism at the end of the day. If you go into what religion are you?
I'm a modern Orthodox Jew.
And you don't know whether there's an afterlife. Well, you're not alone. I have asked this question. I've asked this question of priests. I've asked it of rabbis. I've asked it of Buddhist monks. I've asked it of people who practice voodoo. I've asked it of Native American palm readers, and everyone has a different opinion. You know why? Because nobody knows the answer, Norman. That's why you're not alone. And so, where does that leave you, knowing that we don't know and we can't know until a point comes that we actually die? The answer is it leaves us with the rest of humanity, which is struggling to know, Norman. Mm-hmm. I had some people that were at a cemetery in New York over the weekend, and I asked them to go to my grandfather's grave to say a prayer. You say, well, what do you need to do that for? Well, I never go there. It's a cemetery off the Long Island Expressway. And they couldn't find his tombstone. And then they sent me pictures of people with the same name. And you know what? I got a little upset because who really wants to think about these things every second, Norman? Do you?
No.
No. And what is the point of religion then? If religion does not give you the faith to believe that there is a God in heaven who does the right thing and that there's a reward for leading a right life, then why do you practice a religion at all? So I can only answer it in the negative, Norman, not in the positive. And I will send you a copy of God, Faith, and Reason, so perhaps you can relate to my odyssey. Big horn section. Let's change the tempo of the show from Sturm and Drang to, I don't know, we'll do something happier. Let's do happy talk. Let's be like all of the others in the media and make you happy. Let's try the power of positive thinking. Let's pretend to be optimists. No, not me. I got to do what I got to do, which is what I do, and sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. So what are we talking about? We're talking about, thank God, Trump heard me and did something on the interim level to save the elephants and the lions from the rapacious slaughterers, the cowards with high-powered guns and trappers. That's only the beginning. The indigenous people need to be stopped. They have no care for animals. The natives of Africa, for example, most of them, the tribal people, see an elephant the same way that you see a chicken. And they'll slaughter it in front of its babies. They'll throw the baby into a river. They'll cut the baby's throat to get the mother enraged and make a charge at them. They're very advanced people, you see. You have to understand how advanced they are. It's only we here in the world of America that are so retarded, according to the communists. So we're talking about that. We're talking about, thank God, for big favors. We're talking about my book, God, Faith, and Reason. Selling at about the same level as Trump's war, which was number one in its time, despite being blocked on Fox News, which would be the normal outlet for me. I mean, if you have a guy who has 5, 6, 7 bestsellers in a row, and he is not allowed on Fox News, which pretends to be on this side of the aisle, ask yourself why. Ask yourself why. How is that possible? I don't know. You have to figure it out. One day you'll have to figure it out on your own. But I figured it out. I did some investigation. I found out why. And you'll be shocked to find out the reasons why. That's another story for another time. Tune in January. You'll find out why when something so catastrophic happens to the bullies and the blockers and the fraudulent traitors to alleged conservative principles, to fairness and decency. You'll find out who's who and what's what. I'll tell you the kind of guy I am. I'm actually a pacifist in some ways. I'm a guy who says live and let live. Leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. I, walk to my own tempo. I always have, and somehow, without a little help from my friends, I got where I am. It's like God's hand. The only time I will fight is when someone tries to get at me. If someone tries to get me, I will go at them with everything I have. And I've never lost. People have tried to destroy me before. I have never lost. And I'll say something else, and maybe it's God's hand, and maybe this is a little too personal. Everyone who has tried to interfere with my career has disappeared from the business. Everyone, and that's with no exception. Everyone who has interfered with my path for no reason other than through greed, bullying, insanity, or whatever, has left the media. They're gone. And I don't expect an exception in this time because there's stronger powers than any individual on this earth, much stronger powers. And I allude to it in God, faith, and reason. So I've always said I leave it to fate, I leave it to God. Let God seek vengeance, not me. I don't seek vengeance, I leave it to God. Things will come down that you'll never believe. And some of your heroes will be seen as villains. Just as liberals now are having to deal with the fact that some of the heroes are now seen as villains, it's going to happen to you on the conservative side. I mean, isn't it true that many people thought that Harvey Weinstein was a hero? Now he's their villain. Isn't it true that Glenn Thrush of Politico was seen as a hero? Now he's seen as a villain. You never know what comes around the bend. You never, ever know. So here we are, beautiful day, Monday. Miserable, horrendous weather here in the Bay Area. It's the same way every year. There's no change in the weather whatsoever. Every year since I've lived here for over 40 years, come around Thanksgiving, I always say I want to get out of town. I want to go to Florida. It gets damp. It's not just that it gets cold. I like the cold. I like a little sun, a little snow. Up in Tahoe, yeah, but down here in the Bay Area, horrible, damp. The bay gets in your bones. So I'm thinking already of Florida now. Florida. I'm thinking of Florida. Thanksgiving's coming up. I was going to have it up here, but I don't really want to bother everybody and make them come here just to be with me. I mean, I could go to L.A., you know what I'm saying? But maybe not. I'm actually thinking of canceling Thanksgiving. And, I mean, going nowhere is what I'm saying. I'm not canceling the holiday. I'm saying it's a big deal. Eat the dirty animal, the dirty bird. The poor thing pecks. Will Trump pardon the turkey this year? I wonder. Or have it slaughtered on the White House lawn? Will he pardon it, or will he have it hunted? Will he have someone in the White House come out and shoot it on the White House lawn? I hope he pardons the turkey. I really do. We're also talking about, honestly, we're talking about something very serious, which is I said when your children were born, did it change your life? Because the toughest guy on earth listening to the show, you've all called on that. But before we get to that issue of has the birth of a child changed your life and how, that's a real big topic. I got to read that. So the one half a page, you call it in the last hour, reminded me I wrote about it. I really had not recalled it. Page 21 of God, Faith, and Reason. Yes, it's my own book. Pardon me. If I am not for myself and I do not read from my own book, who will? Who? Someone on Fox News is going to read it? For fathers reading this book, think back to when your first child was born, I write. Think about what it was like to be in that delivery room when your child came into this world. I have spoken to men who have told me it changed their lives forever. That's when a man becomes a different person. He may have been a tough guy before, but he's a different man afterward. When he sees the head of his daughter or his son enter this world, he changes forever. You can't talk about it. There are no words for this. There is no painting for it. All the sonograms in the world don't do it for you what that does for you. That's why I recommend that all men be present when their children are born. It will make you a different man forever. It won't perfect you in any way. You'll probably be the same person, but you'll be a different same person. You hear what I just said to you? Where have you seen writing like this before? I haven't. I didn't copy it. I wrote it. It's one from the heart, which is what the whole book is about. And it leads me to the next. I'm segueing into something else. Maybe I'm running a little late right now, but we can do half and half, right? No? We're still good? More or less? No, can't do it? Can do it? No, cannot do it. Robert says cannot. Robert the boss says we can't run it. We can or we can't? Cannot? No, cannot. But we can after I come back, a little piece of it. So this morning I was on a local show up in Sacramento, out of Sacramento, called Armstrong and Getty. I've known the guys off and on for years. And I didn't think we would talk about what we talked about, but we got to. They're younger guys in radio. They're going to have a big career ahead of them. Everyone who understands any business knows that you got to make room for the younger. Well, they're young guys and they're ambitious. They're gonna move as they should, and I wish them the best, as I do all younger people in the media. Unlike some who are over the age of 50, who want to crush everyone around them as they see themselves as fading movie stars, thinning hair turning gray, face looking like Lou Costello, getting uglier by the day. You know, the portrait of Dorian Gray affects the pretty boys pretty quick in this business. But they won't make room for anybody because they're treasonous to decency, treasonous to fairness, treasonous to alleged conservative principles. They make believe that they care about fairness, but they don't. I do, actually. I want to play that interview because a part of the interview was about what they said about me and how I said my former radio is called a natural radio free association, and how it's actually the easiest thing to do in the world, but if you do it wrong, it's the worst thing to do in the world. And I've heard people try it who should never try it. I don't know how to explain it. If you try to be Babe Ruth when you're just starting out, you will not get to first base. If, on the other hand, you've been doing it for 20 years or more, you might be able to walk around the base instead of running around the bases. So I'm going to take a quick break early, then come back to all the calls and a little bit of sound, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then we'll talk about other things, all the latest news, views, and reviews on the Savage Nation. Welcome to the Savage Nation. You know, I don't want to go into the depressive thing here and the downer. You know, but I'm not one of these guys who fakes optimism. I can't stand people who say I'm an optimist because inside you know they're lying. That's like how to influence people. It's a standard book from the 50s, How to Make Friends and Influence People. I don't believe optimism in this day and age is called for, to be honest with you. I think it's fraudulent, number one. And number two, I don't think there's much to be optimistic about, to be frank with you. Yes, I know we're not living during the siege of Stalingrad, and we're not living during the siege of Pol Pot or the siege of Mao Zedong. I thank God for that. And you could walk around and say, oh, everything's fine, I'm happy and wonderful. Maybe you are. I don't believe that's what the times we are in call for. I think a more measured approach to the times would be in order. You know, so I'm not going to do like the fake happy thing. That's become somewhat of a norm for some people in the media. I don't get that. Personally, I think that negativity and negativism can lead us to the truth and actually teach us a lot more in many ways. So I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. I'm not particularly down or depressed. I just don't see the world in this rosy manner. I don't think it's a great place right now. I don't have to list the reasons, do you? Most particularly right now, what would be the reason I don't see the world as a great rosy place? I don't know. Figure it out. Not for me personally. I'm saying for the world. What, such a perfect world all of a sudden? No. Is this earth the only heaven or the only hell? I'm wondering about that. I see the suffering. I see the slaughter. I see the innocents dying for no reason. I see villains thriving. And I'm not so sure it's such a great place. So we have to traverse these white waters while we're here. We have to learn how to ride the raft. And I think, you want me to start talking about child rearing for a minute? How you ruin your child by trying to block them from everything that's evil in the world? How you're making the child incapable of surviving in the world that we're in? You want me to go down that road? I actually shake my head most over the morons on the left, the progressives so-called, who, for example, 2 weeks ago howled over Trump. Can you explain to me how a society could have devolved to this point that whole masses of hysterical college girls and boys could howl at the sky and think that that is an appropriate response to a dissatisfaction with the outcome of an election? And I ask myself, you have nannies, school moms, telling boys not to play catch, telling boys not to play tag, and things of that nature, completely feminizing an entire generation of boys, weakening boys, attacking the very thing that we need to defend the nation. And I shake my head and say, look what the enemy is doing. I see the armies of millions of Chinese learning martial arts, boys and girls. They have no qualms about teaching their young to fight. While we have legions legions of anti-male psychotics literally demasculinizing America. Where do you think this ends? How does this story end? How can this story end? How can the story end? Tell me how it ends. Let's take a microcosm such as Israel. Can Israel survive into the future when they train their children to be such caring individuals? Care about life, care about others, care about human rights, worry about the New York Times, worry about CNN, when those on the other side are training their children to kill Jews in particular, teach their young to kill little animals so that they become bloodthirsty as adults so they can kill people? Tell me, in the long run, who survives? It's a jungle. It's a survival of the fittest world. And then you have a media that's turning on men in this country, making masculinity itself a disease, making the whole male thing a disease, making the male thing evil. How does this end? Tell me how this society ends, because I can see it pretty clearly. It's a mass hysteria that will lead to, it's actually lemmings going over a cliff through a mass hysteria that will lead to the end of this civilization and society as we know it. Totally lead to the end of it. So, yeah, you say optimism, pessimism is too much. Let's talk about what in the news? What do you want to talk about in the news? Democrat, Republican? Now, you think that's news? That's stupidity? I'm not going to do it. That's not what I do. Let's take some calls. How's that? Can I do that? WABC, Avi, line 1. What's on your mind, Avi?
Hey, hi. I'm giving you a call. It's a real pleasure to speak to you. I'm a massive fan, and I'm a Lubavitcher. I'm a Hasid, and could you hear me?
You go ahead. We're listening.
And so, when my wife was giving birth, there's different opinions of whether or not you could be in the actual
right.
And as the baby was coming out, I ran away like a good yeshiva boy. And but then I said, "What the hell am I doing?" And I ran right back in, and I witnessed one of the greatest, things ever. It was an out of body experience.
Right, because many Orthodox Jewish people say it's not for a man to be there. He's not supposed to see a woman like that. I get it, but that's not what you're calling about, Avi. You're calling about something else, about a cancer thing, right?
And yeah, exactly. And my dad, I found God in a cancer ward. I was in school, and I got a call from my brother, who said, and you got to come home. Dad has a tumor, and I came back home, and I was sitting next to my father for 3 months, and I realized at that moment that I finally believe in God, and it was a very crazy experience for me.
Let's pause right here. You're an Orthodox Jewish man, and yet you never really believed in God until you shared your father's pain?
Exactly. And that's what kind of really turned me on to you. That's when I really started listening to you. It was about 3 years.
Wait. I'm not following this. Why did that lead to me?
Because I restarted thinking. I started thinking for the first time outside of the parameters of the book, outside of this is just the way it is. When I realized it's not, and when I realized that, hey, if I put on tefillin in the morning, or I pray, or I do a good deed, that's not what's going to save my father. I was kind of brought up that way, with this idealistic perspective.
All right, where prayer was all that was required. So I really want to continue this discussion. It's super important to me, and I'm sure there are many people, Christians and Jews out there, even maybe agnostics, who want to hear more from you as to what you think being in a cancer ward with your father, well, not what you think, what happened and why it happened. And then we'll go on to some other things, Avi. Please stay on the line. "34 minutes after the hour, Savage Nation." Yeah, okay, here we go. We're back. How we got to God in the cancer ward from God in a delivery room, I'll never know. But before we go back to Avi, who said he found God in a cancer ward as his father was, I don't know if the father lived or died, by the way. I hope he lived. But I want to make something clear. I'm not a sanctimonious talk show host. I'm not one of these wrapping myself in the Constitution kind of guys. You know what I'm saying? I didn't write it. I'm not holding myself up as some holy roller because I wrote God, Faith, and Reason. I'll tell you point blank, I was in that delivery room, but I had a bottle of wine with me, and it was more empty than full. Shall I start with that? And at the time, I also had a tape recorder playing some Cuban music. So I went in there like, fueled up on my stuff. And then when I walked into the delivery, it was 5 women in that delivery room. The obstetrician was a woman. The the nurse, whatever they were called, I don't know what they call it, woman. Wife was a woman. Believe it or not, my wife was a woman. Would you believe that? I know it's weird to say in the age of American media, but my wife was actually a woman. I know, shocking. It was like 5 women and me. It was like being in a cult. Not occult, but a cult. So we go back to Avi on line 1. Avi, so, okay, you're Orthodox Jewish guy. You never really questioned anything but prayer. Then your father got sick. What happened then?
And I was, praying, and I was doing all those things, and I kind of said, I was sitting next to my father. I remember it was probably midnight, and I'm looking at him lying in bed, and he didn't survive. He actually died 3 months later. And that's what, really set me off on my journey, and I realized how powerless I am, that I'm sitting here and I'm powerless. There's nothing I could do. There's something ravaging my father, going through his body. And
yeah, and prayer did nothing. And in plain English, the prayer did nothing.
Prayer did nothing. You're talking about thousands of people coming, these WhatsApp groups coming to synagogue and praying and giving charity and, it was, mobilizing community, and it was heartwarming, and I realized the power of community, but I also realized that that's not, God isn't textbooks. It's not a textbook thing. It's a perspective. It's a real understanding of what.
So in that way, this is so important. There's probably one of the most important calls I've taken since this book was announced. You didn't lose your faith or your religious beliefs, did you?
No, it reinforced them, but it finally made sense to me. And if I can make this point, because I think this is really what the book is about. I just started reading it over the weekend. I couldn't be happier. I'm going to read that before I read the Torah portion, because I think this is what really makes sense is that 3 years ago you were talking about the Messiah, and this is when I had the paradigm shift, because I still remember this phone call like yesterday. And you answered the guy in about 3 seconds. You pretty much said that the Messiah's perspective, it's an inner thing. It's the way you see the world. It's the way you the way you interact with the person standing next to you, or how you hold the door open, or whatever.
Oh, I was saying that there is no Messiah, that the Messiah is within. I know that's blasphemy to Orthodox religious people who believe that the Messiah has come if they're Christians, and that the Jewish people believe the Messiah has not come, and the Muslims are waiting for the Messiah to return, to arrive, the Mahdi or something like that. But it's all a mythology. The mythology is that the reality is that we are, the whole idea of Messiah is that within us there is a Messiah who can liberate us by taking us across the Red Sea.
Yeah, exactly. And to make your point stronger, because I don't think it's blasphemy, there's a story about a great rabbi who, they came to his house and they said, hey, Messiah's here. And he went to the window and he opened up his window. He stuck his head out and smelled there and said, no, Messiah's not here. So, they asked the question, if Messiah was here, why did he have to go open up his window? Because the answer is, correct me if I'm wrong, is that in his house, the way he was living in his space, Messiah was there. It already existed. He went outside to to smell the air symbolically, I guess, to say no, it's not. He's not. But that's really your point. And
that's sort of Avi. You are actually approaching a mystical belief system, by the way. You know that.
I get correct, which is God.
That's right. Well, you could look at it that way. I don't think this whole issue of God is cut and dried. I don't think it's as clear as people would like it to be. For some it is. For some it's strictly a matter of God exists, we pray, and that's all we know while we live and die. That's all they know, and that's the way they do it. But for those amongst us who are thinking people, who are skeptical people, who are scientific people, there is far more to this discussion than simply let us say, doing the ritualistic stuff and leaving it at that. So, Avi, at the end of the day, where does this leave you? You're still a religious man, rather?
Yeah, yeah, I am. I'm a father. My daughter's 2.5. It's the greatest joy of my life.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing, Avi. The beautiful part of this story is that although you sat with your father, which is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, how many sons would even sit with a father who's dying this day and age? They'd be too busy, making phone calls and running their lives. They wouldn't even sit with the father. Maybe they come once for a visit here and there, and that would be the end of it. That's the beautiful part of the story, Avi, is that you were with him.
Thank you. And I had maybe you could help me with this. I didn't have the best relationship with my dad, and I had a very powerful relationship with my dad. And I remember I'm saying this on public radio, but literally, because this happened right after Passover. Imagine, the whole family comes in. There's like 12 of us at the table, and then 2 weeks later, I find out that he's dying in a cancer ward. But and it was that when I was over for the holiday where I got kind of pissed. I was angry at him, and I told him something, that wasn't. It was hurtful. I was going through a lot of stuff with him, we still had that relationship, and I was able to, obviously put that aside because you realize in those moments that, all that stuff means nothing in the greater picture, that it's just love.
Well, but just take satisfaction in the fact that you as a son were there for your father when he was dying. How many sons would do that in this world? Oh, they'd fly in for a visit, and then they'd leave and come back when he was, at the last minute. But you did a great thing, Avi, and should take great pleasure in the fact that you're a great son. And frankly, all the book knowledge in the world doesn't mean anything compared to that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Savage.
I want to say one last thing because we may never talk again. A number of years ago, I was troubled with my relationship with my own parents, God rest their souls. They died a long time ago. And I went to a woman who was quite religious. She's married to a rabbi. And I told her I really had trouble with my mother, and I don't like this whole thing of honor thy father and thy mother. I was really upset with that commandment. I said, I cannot honor my father and my mother. I said, I fought with them my whole life because I was a rebel when I was young. I didn't like what they were doing to me and stuff like that. And she said to me that honor thy father and thy mother does not mean worship thy father or thy mother. Just honor the fact that you are born from them. That's the whole meaning of the commandment, honor thy father and thy mother. That liberated me, Avi.
Wow, that's so powerful. Yeah.
So you see what I mean? The teachings like this are commonsensical, and I try to put my life of learning into God, faith, and reason in simple ways and in profound ways through telling stories, not by preaching from a Bible. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you'll be shocked of how many religious Jews that are going to be buying your book and reading it because I
don't know. That's a whole other story. I didn't know that they buy secular books. I know that religious Jews are not allowed to have TV. They're not allowed to listen to television. I don't blame them. They don't go to the movies. I don't blame them. But how many of them go into a bookstore and buy a secular book? This is almost a blasphemous book. It's God, faith, and reason. It's not a religious book.
Amazon. You're forgetting about Amazon. How many?
Oh, it's a secret way to buy the book without anyone knowing. It comes in a plain brown wrapper.
Yeah.
All right, Avi, you're a great caller. I hope we do meet one day. It'd be beautiful to meet you. What do you look like?
Thank you. I look like I'm a handsome boy. I got a little beard, and I got glasses. I wear a wedding band. Kind of rebellious for a Hasid. And
what? You're not supposed to wear a wedding band as a Jew?
A Jew's abroad. As a Jew or as an Orthodox Jew?
Well, I'm saying Orthodox Jews are not supposed to wear wedding bands. I never heard that. Why?
Some of them. The Hasidic. I'm a Lubavitcher, so you're not supposed to wear anything that a woman would wear. But
wow! Oh my God, that's heavy.
Yeah, that's heavy. It's heavy, but you know what? You realize with truths like the one you just said that, there's options and there's truths that make sense to you. Like when I ran back into the delivery room to watch my daughter be born, it was almost like something just came into me and said, like, you got to be there. Like I just picked up, and as I walked in, I just saw my daughter be born, and as I just witnessed greatness, there's
no words for it, Avi. I hear you're groping for words because there are none.
Yeah, and
some things have no words, and that's one of the things that must be experienced. You can't read about it or see it on a website. and it makes you blessed. It makes you really respect what a woman must do to have a baby. It's one of the most profoundly difficult things on earth. You know, you say it's easy, billions of people do it, but that's not what it is to a woman whose whole life is turned inside out and ripped apart from the inside out to do that. And she has to be respected for that no matter what the heck happens between you and her. You must always remember that because she brings life into the world. We're nothing but the seeds flying in the air. Avi, thank you for calling. Let me send you a copy of God, Faith, and Reason to give to another individual. Let's put it to you that way. I don't want to trivialize it with a quick one. Well, I don't know how the show is flying like this. I've said it before. Some days it's like on the wings of an eagle, and sometimes it's like on the legs of an ant. I'll be back in a minute to continue flying with you on the Savage Nation. Hey, welcome back to the show. You know, sooner or later, I've told you this before, and we all know it. I mean, your car's going to break down one day. It's a fact. It's like a person. Every car, truck, and SUV owner knows this. And look, if you're lucky, it'll happen while it's under warranty. But what if happens after the warranty is over? What are you going to do then? What are you going to do then? Well, I hope you go to carshield.com. That's why they advertise on my show, because I want to help you. A new engine, new tranny, over $5,000. Simple repair to a sensor today, over $1,000. Why don't you skip that? Why don't you go to carshield.com, because you can even go to the dealership to do the work or your favorite mechanic if something breaks. You don't have to wait for a check in the mail. CarShield gets the mechanic paid directly. CarShield's administrators even give you the VIP treatment, giving you 24/7 roadside assistance and a rental car while yours is in the shop. So if your car is 3 to 12 years old, it doesn't mean you have to pay high repair bills. CarShield administrators have paid out close to $2 billion in claims, and they are ready to help you. Listen carefully. Save yourself thousands in potential car repairs. Get covered by the ultimate extended vehicle service protection before it's too late. Simply call 800-CAR-6100, code SAVAGE. You got that? 800-CAR-6100, code SAVAGE. Or go to carshield.com, code SAVAGE. Savings up to 10% if you do that. You got it? That's carshield.com, code SAVAGE. A deductible may apply. Now play She's a Guillotine. There we go. It is a show that's on the wings of an eagle today, just up on the Drudge Report. Fox News host Jeanine Pirro hit with speeding charges after cops clock her driving 119 miles an hour in upstate New York. Oh, my God. Judge Jeanine. Slow down there, Jeanine. Cops say she was driving 119 miles an hour in a 65-mile-an-hour zone when she was stopped by a trooper about 1:15 p.m. Sunday afternoon in the town of Nichols in Tioga County. What can you say about that? She got caught, that's all. That's all. 11 points in a driver's license. Oh, she's a host on the Fox News Channel show Justice with Jeanine. She recently interviewed President Trump, met with him in the White House. Very nice. The Republican Pirro also served as a Westchester County DA after serving 3 years as a county judge. Well, different strokes for different folks, I guess. And now back to the callers on the Savage Nation, 855. What kind of car was she driving? 119 miles an hour. That's a pretty good speed. I hope her tires were good. That's all I can say. You know, that's a heavy speed, 119 miles an hour. Imagine if a lib did that. What if a lib was caught speeding 119 miles an hour? Let's say a liberal who had been a judge was caught at 119 miles an hour. What would you be clucking now on the conservative side? All of you constitutionalists, what would you be saying? Ooh, liberal speed. What goes around comes around. We're talking about birth. We're talking about children being born. Joe on WABC, go ahead. You got the last word in this hour.
Hi, Dr. Savage. It's an honor to speak to you.
Okay, you better talk fast because time is a-clicking.
The Messiah within us brings the ultimate Messiah. So there is a Messiah that's going to redeem the ultimate redemption. It all depends on us every day.
I agree with you. There's a collective. What you're saying is that if all people collectively were to fulfill the Messianic tradition, the Messiah would come. That's what you're saying, right?
Correct, but it depends on individually as well.
I totally agree with you. In other words, you're not absolved of the need to perfect yourself in some ways. I think that's what you're saying also, Joe, correct?
You cannot disconnect yourself from the ultimate redemption, saying that, oh, it has nothing to do with me. It does have to do with you.
Absolutely 100%. And everything we do on this earth somehow pulls a string on the big spider web in the sky.
And the Jew
everything that we do somehow touches the big spider web that connects it all.
Exactly. One more comment, Dr. Savage. Where God was always through all those bad things. If we would understand we don't need a God, then we could be the God. That's why he's higher than us.
I understand. How do you understand a thing of a baby suffering in a cancer ward or a Holocaust where 6 million Jews are tortured and killed? How do you understand? How do you accept a thing like that without going crazy?
Faith.
Oh, there you go. It's faith, but not reason. The only place reason plays in understanding this is to say there must be a reason without knowing the reason. So that leads to faith, because there is no reason to make 6 million people suffer. So the only thing is to have faith that there is a reason. That's the conundrum. This is the guru, Michael Savage, sending you a copy of God, Faith, and Reason for those of you who want to read more about my own personal insights and quests. I'll be back in a minute. I can't believe how fast everything is flying today. Why is that? God only knows. It is a manic Monday. I wouldn't say manic. I can't wait till Wednesday already. Never mind a manic Monday. Welcome to the show. First 2 hours flew like an eagle in pursuit of a burning man, chasing a dying man, chasing a squirrel up a tree. Welcome to the Savage Nation. And as time goes on, where do you want me to go in this hour? Where do I want to go in this hour? There's so many areas I want to go in. As one of my favorite authors, Henry Miller, wrote, each day I awake and my feet take me in 1,000 directions before he gets out of bed, right? So like last night, I woke up 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I don't know what it was. I do know what it was. I went to sleep too early, had a big meal. I had it 8 o'clock for me, which is very early. So most days I get up at 6:15. Today I wanted to sleep in, but I woke up at 3. You know, whenever I have a really early morning interview, since I time my head out for the show, which is midday, I don't want to, go off early, but I had to go off early, so I get up too early. It's like traveling. Like when you travel, I can't sleep the night before. Not out of worrying, but it's like I'm afraid I'm going to miss it. Like I had a dream that I was going on the radio any minute, and I couldn't get to the studio in my house in time, and then there were no ISDN connections in the room. You know, crazy stuff that you dream. It's like when you're young, you dream that you're missing a final in a college. You still have dreams like that 20 years later. I still dream I'm going back to Queens College and I missed the final. Would you believe that? It's hard to believe what the mind does to you. So I'm not an academic theological guy. I'm a person who's walking on the broken the broken shards of life. I'm like a Fijian firewalker in some ways. I remember the years I spent in the Fiji Islands studying folk medicine, medicinal plants. When I first encountered the firewalkers, I was so amazed that people could walk on hot coals. I've seen it done by Indians, people from India in Fiji. I've seen it done by Fijians. Now, the trick to firewalking, as I understand it, is that there's really no trick. It's a mindset. It's the same way that an Indian fakir can lie on a bed of spikes and not get poked. There's a mind element to it. You say mind over matter. There is mind over a lot of matter. And you in your own life would know that you've had experiences where your mind transcended the body. And without that mind over matter, you never would have been able to lift that Volkswagen off the dog or whatever I'm saying, Something happens. Some superpower comes over a woman. You've seen these stories since I'm a kid. I've seen them. A superpower comes over a woman. She lifts a car that rode over a child, God forbid, and she doesn't know where the strength came from to lift the car. So these are the superpowers within all of us. We all have these superpowers. I'm an ordinary person, just as you are, in case you don't know it. Sure, I have the power of the microphone, which makes me sound like I'm different, but I'm the same as you, the same, thing, whatever. There's no superpower, but there is a superpower. So how do you tap into the superpower? That's your business, not mine. I believe, truthfully, that unless a religion gives you power, meaning energy, meaning some survival power, the religion has no meaning. In other words, you have to believe that when you go in that church or you go in that synagogue and you make those prayers, that somehow You are getting some kind of connection to a higher power that's giving you the strength to be stronger in your daily life. That's what I see religion as. And if it doesn't do that, that's why the people are leaving churches and synagogues in droves. And I can't speak to that for the individual out there. Unless that power comes to you during that prayer. And I would think it comes to you through the congregation. The power of a lot of people in a room praying at the same time must be awe-inspiring for those who are in that room. I've seen it, I felt it. But I live in my own world here, and I say no man is an island. So I want to go for a minute to the callers we've touched on with the thing about a child being born. But before I do, many of you don't know what this book is about. You say, I don't want to read a preachy book by a guy who's going to lead me into religion. No, that's not what God, Faith, and Reason is. Okay, part one. Some of these entries are a page long, some are 12 pages long. You can open it in the middle. If you go into a bookstore today or tomorrow and you flip through the book, it was designed so that you can get trapped into a single page and say, that's pretty good, I'm going to look into more of it. Or you'll start reading and there's 10 pages. So like Faith and Reason, Glimpses in Literature, Indignation, Dinner with an Atheist and a Buddhist. It's impossible to prove that God does not exist. Papers in the Street. A 4-year-old's View of God. Is God real? Where is God? Part 2, God and Nature. The Amulet. How sensitive do you want to be? Dominion. First Fruits. I'm not going to read it all to you. You can read it yourself. I don't know what I actually want to read something to you right now. I don't know which one. Jewish Gangster Finds God's Too Long. Lonesome Boy on Cold Sand, too maudlin. The Boy Scout thing with the sand and the broccoli. No, I'm not going to do it. Halloween is bigger than Christmas. That's a self-explanatory entry. Burning Man, you know what I think about that. Guilt and Religion, Hillary's Sins Washed Away. That's a little political. How Revolutionaries Kill God. God, don't get me started on Marxism and communism. Don't get me started on Marx, Lenin. Don't get me started on those mass murderers like Stalin. Please don't get me started on real mass murderers. Don't get me started on real fascism. These dolts who call Trump a fascist, they have no idea what they're talking about. They are the stupidest, most ignorant people I've ever met in the world. No, you don't live in fascism, you schmuck. If you lived in fascism, you'd be in a torture chamber. You live in the freest country on earth that you can curse the president and get away with it, idiot. You don't live in fascism, you moron. The Meaning of Passover, Buddhism, the Religion of Submission, Lonesome Boy on Cold Sand, Rabbi in a Brothel, The Room with a View to Eternity, The Savage Duality of Man, God is Everywhere, An Eye for an Eye, The Garden of Eden, Our Covenant with All the Ills of the World, The Power of the Searcher, Passion's Power, Lotus from the Muck. Let me see Lotus from the Muck. That caught my eye, my own book. You know, I don't even know what's in here at this point. Oh, what is this? I wrote this? That can't be true. Are you ready for this? Because I can't believe I wrote this. Page 117. Maybe I'll be condemned for this. Maybe I shouldn't even read it. Lotus from the Muck. I began as a Buddhist, formless. In time, shaped as I was by my parents, my sister, even by my sacrificial brother, Jerome, Jewish became my identity as a cultural being. But what was this religion I belonged to? Was it merely candles flaming me to sleep on Friday eves like two golden rails if you quietly drifted off in your father's lap, squinting up long enough to distort the twin flames? Was it great festive meals once or twice a year, the women cooking, seemingly forever, great filling dishes that I knew now to be dreadfully unhealthful? Was it a cheap blue suit with other boys in like outfits walking to synagogue on our Atonement Day, dodging the goyim who chased us with nylon stockings filled with powdered chalk, swinging their mothers' discarded skins to defile our once-a-year best and tell us we were Jews? Defined so by others, I grew up Jewish, or so I thought. Coming upon myself some 40 years into life's endlessness, approaching my own cherished boy's initiation into his people, and again reevaluating my life as a Jew, I found religion to be the least important facet of the diamond. Judaism is both more and less than a religion, both more and less than a people. Surely it is not a land, and certainly not a way of life. It is more than a religion when mere observance is transcended and seen for the God-binding acts they are, the rituals designed to bind us through the chakras and shekinahs. It is less than a religion when dumb unthinkingness refuses to budge from its shelled camouflage. It is more than a people. It is many peoples, from Yemenites brown in hue to Nordic-looking Germans. It is less than a people when the world or inner imbalance drives us to a collective act of madness. It is more than a land. It is many lands, but beyond a geographical naturalism. Wondering and worrying, I sat in my car in the rain, parked up a San Francisco hill. Looking back down Grant Avenue through the raindrop mirror, I heard the thought, where am I? What am I doing here? I used to be so sure of my place and direction. Soon after followed this rejoinder, didn't we all? The lights of a city created and creating a sense of place. Today we belong to this place, yesterday to that place, and tomorrow to the worlds of the deathless moons. Pages 117 and 18 of this strange book called God, Faith, and Reason. What do you make of it? I'll let you figure it out. See if you can typecast it any more than you can typecast me. Let's take some calls. God, the time is a-flying. Samuel on WABC. I hope I can see line 6. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I wanted to refer to the previous caller about finding God in a time of tragedy. I myself personally went through a tragedy a few years ago, and before that I was a religious man, and I felt go-lucky. And when that happened, everything came crashing down. And I think at that moment I had to really recalculate and ask myself, am I believing just for the benefit of all the good blessings, or is it really what I believe in? And I felt I knew too much to run away, and I had to face my problems, my issues, my challenges, and I had to be able to see God from a deeper perspective. I think that's one. Another thing what I could share is, if you are, everything is great and you love God, it not necessarily means you love God. You love yourself. I'm very happy with God because He's giving me whatever I need. So I don't love Him. I love myself. When I'm not having everything that I need and I'm still able to find a space for God in my life, in my sorrow, in my problems, I think that's real. That's very unique. That's very personal.
So did you leave your religion as a result of your tragedy?
No, I did not leave, but I had to. I feel that it became a lot more authentic. It was more superficial. When you grow up with something, it's not necessarily always your choice. But
so you're saying that it's easy to love God when everything's going your way. But the real test of whether you love God is when things don't go your way.
Precisely.
Well, there's nothing to say to that other than everyone comes to these terms on their own. Yeah. Everyone comes to these decisions. Samuel, no one can live anyone else's life for them, Samuel. Nobody really has the answer. And that's the horrible reality of being an adult. You know, when you're a puppy, when you're a little boy or a little girl, you can believe that your father or your mother or a loved one knows the answer. But when you become an adult, you realize we're really all alone walking in the darkness. Isn't that true?
You're alone until you be able to find something to hold on to. You know, when you're
okay. Well, in your case, what did you find to hold on to?
I don't know if I could, offhand, just give you a specific.
But you know, just think. So for a lot of people who've given up this whole thing of faith, to them it's hedonism. They hold on to the next orgasm. They hold on to the next pleasure they're going to have, the next this, the next that. They're running after that orgiastic release. That's what they hold on to. How many years can you hold on to a thing like that, Samuel, till you run out of steam?
So let me work the other way around. Reason is a blessing. However, there are shortcomings to that as well. I mean, the Nazis reasoned everything, why they were doing what they're doing. So you have to live with reason. You have to know why you believe. You can't just believe with pure faith. That's insanity. You have to study. You have to, everybody today, no one's going to believe that a cell phone came raining down from heaven. A cell phone doesn't come by itself. It has to come from somewhere. They make it. They make it in China. They make it wherever they make it. If I take a cell phone and I show it to everybody in Crown, I say, this just came from the Big Bang. What do people tell me? They're going to say, you're crazy. But I can make millions of cell phones today. At the same time, no one's going to accept that it came by itself. When you have a human being, and we're talking about that before also, a baby being born, a child being born, you can't make that today. It doesn't happen. That's not a mistake. If a cell phone is not a mistake, a baby is not a mistake. There has to be a God. If you think about it, you have to use your reason. You have to use your knowledge. Why?
Now, why would some babies be born who are blind and deaf and crippled? Now, what's the reason for that?
Okay, I don't have the answer, but I can ask you. I could try to explain it on this in this parable. You have a child that's 5 years old. Can you explain him the workings of Wall Street, the value of money at the age of 5 years old? No, you can't. However, you're hoping that one day, when he gets older and he becomes an adult, he's able to take in greater ideas and understand the value of life and the value of money, and then he can understand it. But we all know that as a 5-year-old, there's no way he can understand it. What's the difference between a 5-year-old and an adult? It's just a matter of time, process, development, but it's the same person. It's a child that's going to be an adult. However, at that age, there's no way he can understand it. We cannot compare ourselves to God. The space, the distance between us and God is far more. So obviously, there's going to be things in life we'll never understand. We have to. That makes sense. You have to be able to see.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, Samuel. What you're saying is that we are like children, and the all-knowing masters of the universe don't know that. They think that they know everything because they make billions of dollars a year by trading stocks or bonds or whatever, or they invest in real estate and make hundreds of millions of dollars. They start to think they know everything. But at the end of the day, what do we really know is what you're saying, correct?
Yeah.
Samuel, I really appreciate the call. It's very deep. I could speak with you for hours. Unfortunately, I have to move along. I'm sending you a copy of God, Faith, and Reason. I'm sure that you know it all. Really, I'm not being facetious. You probably have. No, you didn't walk down my road. Maybe it'll help you trigger some answers in your own mind. I'll be right back. There's almost no time in this segment, but I just got a blockbuster story that's hard to believe. Take a guess who was the latest J'accuse victim. Charlie Rose. Nudity, groping, lewd calls. 75 years old? I mean, you read these stories, you don't, but he already apologized. He said essentially that we women know I hear them, and I hear them. Here we go, the liberal answer. Charlie Rose says, it's essential that these women know I hear them and that I deeply apologize for my inappropriate behavior. Blah, blah, blah. Shared feelings. I realized I was mistaken. He didn't know he was mistaken when he walked out of a shower naked in front of his assistant? He didn't know it then. Now he knows it. Could you believe this? Two said that while they were working for Charlie Rose at his residences or were traveling with him on business, he emerged from the shower and walked naked in front of them. One said he groped her buttocks at a staff party. He didn't know it was inappropriate then, but he suddenly came to an awareness that it's inappropriate. You hear this? Where does this BS come from when they jump out and, I'm sorry I did it? What man would come out naked in front of an assistant and not know it's inappropriate, in fact, outright sick, if it's true? Well, there goes another one down the drain, PBS, bingo. Mr. Sanctimony is gone. Welcome back, Savage Nation. We're talking about elephants. We're talking about lions. But I didn't ask you what is your favorite part of God, Faith, and Reason. I haven't asked you that yet, and I'm going to ask you that. You bought the book. I know that the sales are close to that of Trump's War in week 1. We'll have the exact placement on the Barnes & Noble bestseller list by tomorrow night and the New York Times list by Wednesday night, and I'll share it with you. I don't know what it's going to be. My guess, top 10. Without any appearance in any TV shows. And although I was promised appearances on a certain network that's known for being so-called conservative, what I've discovered in my life is that God has a way of getting even with people who are really evil. In fact, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. That's the way it is. So, no, you're not going to see me on Fox News. 2 major league hosts try to get me on. But a certain individual who specializes in pretending he's one thing when he's in another, especially to fairness, decency, conservative principles, has stood in the way of my appearance. So what? Would it have sold another 5,000 books? Let me tell you something. What I'm going to tell you is that you are who is important. And I'll tell you something else. The sales of the book without Fox News are about equal to that of Trump's War. It will not be number 1 on the list this time for one reason. The headwinds are very strong. Biden came out with a book in this season. There's huge competition. And for a man alone with a radio show and nothing else, a few friends in the media here and there, it's very difficult in this world. But the thing is that that's the way it is. And I am actually, I think it's a miracle that this book was published to begin with. No publisher would have touched it but the publisher who had so many successes with me. but they took a chance on it. They did it for me. And to put these words between covers and display it in bookstores is a miracle unto itself. My feeling is this: God, Faith, and Reason at this point will have to sell based upon its placement in the stores and your support of that book and my show. It's that simple, because it's not going to be seen anywhere else. Again, this is one topic I'm going to talk about. As you know, I spend 2 straight days, 3 hours a day, 6 straight hours, imploring the president to reverse the ban of bringing in elephant trophies. I was adamant about it. I said things no one else dared say, and I basically hoped that the president would get the message, and he did. But I didn't know that when I left the air on Friday. What happened was I went to dinner with a friend of mine, and as I sat down to dinner in San Francisco with the cable cars below us, I got a text from a very important person in the media who said Trump's going to reverse the ban on bringing in elephant and lion and such trophies. I said to my friend, God has answered our prayers. God heard us. So I want to say thank you to all in the Savage Nation who texted or emailed Donald Trump. It's not over yet. But we're going to talk about that for a minute, because to me, I realized 2 things when that happened. One, there is still a great, great power in talk radio, which I've never doubted. It is probably the most proactive of all the media types in the world. So many other outlets for media today. I believe that the talk radio audience is the most proactive in the world. It far surpasses Fox News, which is a passive audience. It far surpasses any other network in terms of reaction of audience, as I have seen over and over again, whether it's through the fact that my last book was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. I will say it until you gag on it. I was not allowed on Fox News. I found out that there's an individual who's blocking me. I will not tell you who it is at this time. But nevertheless, without any television, with very little promotion, Trump's war became #1. Why? My audience is not the largest in the media, and yet the audience is very, very reactive. So thank you for helping on the elephant deal. It's not over till it's over. And I want to talk about that, because that night of sleep, I was actually stunned. I could hardly eat dinner because my head was like, how could this really have happened so fast? I never thought that Trump would react so quickly to an outcry like this. Well, of course, he should have, because whoever put this order in place should be fired immediately. Whoever took a schmear from the Chinese government, or took a schmear from the hunters associations, or took a schmear from wherever, they should be found out and thrown out of the Trump administration. But that's up to Trump, not up to me. I put it on my website, michaelsavage.com. Trump hears the Savage Nation reinstates ban of elephant trophies. I went to sleep that night, as I normally do, go to sleep at night, and I heard the elephants crying at night. I heard them signaling and saying thank you to Michael and the Savage Nation. I heard the most noble creatures on the earth sending their sound waves through the universe. Let me tell you that right now. You say, that's stupid, that's impossible. Have you ever studied cetaceans such as whales and porpoises? Do you know how far their signals carry under the water to other cetaceans? Well, I'm not a cetacean, I'm a human. But there's a part of me that has a mystical receiver. And the mystical receiver received Ellie's signals. And all I can say, Ellie, is we're not forgetting you on Monday while we appealed for you on Friday. And I can also say, Ellie, while the other dumbos in talk radio who didn't even know about this issue will soon take credit for saving you, they will be the same ones who attacked Trump before they supported Trump, Ellie. And I think the people know exactly what I am talking about. So on Saturday I did an interview, and it's up on michaelsavage.com. Many of you will find it offensive. It says, Savage takes credit for Trump elephant reversal. I'm one of many, but a very important one of many. And I will read that article to you in a moment. You can see it on my site or on Newsmax. But it is a godsend. Savage, a longtime conservationist and animal rights activist, told Newsmax in an exclusive interview Saturday, I'm glad Trump made the decision that led to the tweet. I'm glad he heard the show and read the column. President Trump said late Friday that he was putting a decision on lifting the ban announced Wednesday by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, quote, on hold pending a review of all conservation facts. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke later said in a statement also on Twitter that President Trump and I have talked and both believe that conservation and healthy herds are critical. Zinke should be fired. Zinke is a disaster for the United States. Zinke is a disaster. He's a throwback. Zinke is exactly why people hate conservatives and Republicans, in case you don't know it. Zinke is the land killer, the air killer. Zinke is the animal killer. I'm telling you what I'm talking about is 100% true. Trump could not have made a worse choice than promoting this guy, Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, to the Interior Department. He will set this country back 50 years. He will pollute the airs, waters, and places. And as I said Friday, this elephant story is only one part of a bigger puzzle. You cannot roll back every environmental regulation that was put in place by Obama and say you're doing something good for the economy. We will go back in time to a point we do not want to be. And let me tell you another story. I live here in San Francisco, which I love very much. I have many other places to live in, and I choose to come back here. I live here for the environment, not for the people. There was a time on San Francisco Bay that people ate the clams and oysters out of this bay. In fact, there were shrimp farms in Northern California, right near San Rafael at China Camp, where the Chinese harvested shrimp right out of the bay. That day ended a long time ago. As the bay became polluted, it turned toxic. You couldn't eat shellfish; you'd get poisoned. And so people were throwing effluents into the bay and whatnot. The bay turned from blue to gray. And what happened was the environmentalists came along. Actually, they were conservationists at the time, somewhere around the late 50s and early 60s, and they started to protect San Francisco Bay and other waterways for that matter. Well, at this point, there are no shrimp in the bay that anyone would eat unless they're crazy. But there are fish we can eat. I eat many different species of fish from the bay, and I've never died from it. And that's because of conservationists like myself. And conservationists play an enormously important role in this country. And for Donald Trump to appoint an anti-conservationist like Ryan Zinke, who thinks that by undoing every environmental law is good for the economy and therefore it's good for mankind, is the stupidest thing you could ever see. And so therefore, that's what I want to say about that matter. And when I saw that Donald Trump reversed the order of the evildoer who said you can bring home trophies like elephant tails, tusks to sell to the vermin in China. On November 17th, I posted a picture of a dead elephant. If you look at the picture, go to my Twitter feed, and it was from an article, The Big Game Killing Field, Sickening Bloodlust of Trophy Hunters. Look at the elephant's eye. You'll see an animal that died in agony. Elephants are social creatures. They are not chickens. They are not microbes. When one elephant dies, the whole herd feels it. They grieve for each other just because they don't look like us. And so I wrote, do brave men hunt elephants? Should Trump prevent the importation of lion and elephant trophies? Somehow that tweet was picked up by the Washington Post. And then, thank you, President Trump. Flash, flash, flash. Trump, here's the savage nation. Reverses the order. And we better pray to God that this reversal is continued, not only for the elephants, but for the lions, the rhinoceros, etc. I want to shift, though, to something entirely different. This is a great topic. What has the birth of a child done to you? I'm talking about someone who's actually been in a delivery room. I'm not talking about the old days where you went out and had drinks with your friends and smoked a cigar, and then your wife was given to you all cleaned up, and you know, like in the movies of the 50s. You went to the hospital, and there it was in a bassinet or something, and you were with your friends. No, I'm talking about the modern day of where the guys, it just started in the 60s, by the way, where they said it was better for the family, for the father to be in the delivery room, which, by the way, is repugnant to a lot of men. It's actually against the religion of certain people. Did you know that? To see the birth of a child. I don't know if you know this. Are there Orthodox Jewish people listening to this show who can inform me on this? As I understand it, it's actually against the religious teachings to be in the room of a birth. Am I wrong about that? Or did I read that in the wrong place? I'm not quite sure about it. But irrespective of what the religion of Orthodox Judaism teaches on this, I believe that it makes a man a much more profound father than it does just simply see the baby brought home from the hospital wrapped up and clean. Moreover, I'll tell you something else, guys, that you may not know. Maybe it's a little awkward to say it, but it's Life 101. Someone has to say it. When you see the travail that your wife goes through, you will come to appreciate how powerful a woman is and has to bear to bring the child into this world. And when you compare that woman, your wife, who gave you that baby, with the stick figure phonies in the media, you'll understand the difference between a woman and a stick figure produced by Harvey Weinstein. Let me put it to you that way. There is nothing to compare to that. And you may have your troubles in your life, in your marriage, as everyone does. But in the midst of all your troubles, you will never forget that were it not for the woman, there would be no family at all. None. You're just one of many that could have passed through. You know what I'm saying? But your child came because of her, and she had to put up with the pain of delivering that child. It tears a woman apart. It rips her to shreds. It tears her from inside out. So, have some respect for the poor woman. I know women don't want to hear poor woman, but believe me, it's a tremendously profound experience, both positive and negative for a woman. I can go on and on about this story. Many women have postpartum depression, and they don't even know why. I know why, because I've studied it for 40 years. Can I talk about postpartum depression for a minute? I think I should, just as I've got into it. I mean, it's a sort of free-flowing show. When the embryo is developing inside a woman, where does the embryo get the nutrients from? Well, it comes from the mother. Now, you do know that all the nutrients that the developing fetus gets come from the mother. Do you know that if the mother does not have sufficient calcium intake, for example, she is liable to lose her teeth? I've seen that personally, not in my own family, but when I was working in a medical clinic. There are women who, at the end of 7 or 8 months, lost half their teeth because they were not taking sufficient calcium in food or in supplements, and the baby will take it first. That's the way nature designed it. Baby first, mother second. That's how the baby gets born. Otherwise, it would be deprived of nutrients and die, or be born, in a deformed manner. So now that we know about calcium, teeth, mother, but how many other nutrients are depleted in the growth of the fetus and the birth of the baby? So when the baby is born, the mother is completely depleted of nutrients. She is worn out. She often falls into a steep depression. And unfortunately, they are treated psychologically rather than nutritionally. Had they had proper nutrition during gestation and after birth, there would be far less postpartum depression. I wrote about it in the book I published in the 1980s entitled Healing Children Naturally, which I think is still available. In fact, I think it's on my website for sale. I've stumbled upon a copy a while ago. It's still a great book. It was 25 years ahead of its time. And I would recommend all women out there to look into it, not only for themselves, but for the children that they're trying to raise. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. Oh, how sad, how sad. We are hearing that Charlie Rose was just suspended by CBS. Earlier today, the Washington Post reported that 8 women say Charlie Rose sexually harassed them with nudity, groping, and lewd calls. Play Mr. Sandman for me if you've missed this. Bum, 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 bum. This is dedicated to Charlie Rose. He's just a romantic. Most of the women said Charlie Rose alternated between fury and flattery in his interactions with them. Play the song. Maybe the song's better. Maybe he grew up on songs like this. He was just a romantic. As he emerged from the shower and walked naked in front of his assistant, it could be romanticism. I could be misreading this. Most of the women said sanctimonious Charlie Rose alternated between fury and flattery in his interactions with them. 5 described Charlie Rose putting his hand on their legs, sometimes their upper thigh, in what they perceived as a test to gauge their reactions. 2 women said that while they were working for Charlie Rose at his residences or traveling with him on business, he emerged from the shower and walked naked in front of them. One said he groped her buttocks at a staff party. Now, on his side of the thing here, of the ledger, he said the following: in my 45 years in journalism, I have prided myself on being an advocate for the careers of women, blah, 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 blah. It's essential these women know I hear them. How San Francisco can you get, Charlie? It's essential to women know that I hear them and I deeply apologize for my inappropriate behavior. He thought he was pursuing shared feelings, even though he now realizes he was mistaken. I've learned a great deal as a result. All right. Hey, folks, go buy God, Faith, and Reason and send the copy to Charlie Rose. Because at this point, only God knows what's going to happen with him.